Mass incarceration has a face, and it's the face of freedom. And the face today is Tyrone Jones. Tyrone Jones, age 50, a black male, is currently serving life in prison for armed robbery. And this is the Tyrone Jones story. As Tyrone Jones sat in his prison cell, looking at the documents with case number 738777 emblazoned on his file, he knew that his journey was far from over. But with a newfound resolve and a glimmer of hope in his heart, he vowed to rewrite the narrative of his life, one day at a time. In the shadow of his past mistakes, a new story began to unfold, one of redemption, forgiveness, and the relentless pursuit of a second chance to tell his story and seek the freedom he deserves. Tyrone Jones is the son of Miss Yvonne Jones and Mr. Roosevelt Snow. Both parents are now deceased. His siblings are Glenn, Roosevelt, and Derek Jones. Tyrone was born and raised in Louisiana along with his siblings. Growing up in a broken home with an absent father and a mother battling her own demons, Tyrone sought solace in the streets where friendships came at a price. From a young age, Tyrone faced a myriad of challenges that seemed insurmountable. As a teenager, he found himself drawn into the dangers of drug sales. For Tyrone, selling drugs was a way to provide for his alcohol addiction and escape from the harsh realities of poverty in his everyday life. The allure of quick money and a sense of belonging pulled him deeper into a lifestyle that seemed impossible to escape. As the years passed, Tyrone found himself trapped in a cycle of addiction, his days becoming a blur of alcohol induced haze. His first run in with the law came when Tyrone was 12. He was arrested for selling drugs. He started selling drugs to support his habit and assist his single mother with food for himself and his brothers. Sentenced to juvenile detention, Tyrone experienced firsthand the harsh realities of the justice system. Surrounded by a system that did little or nothing to rehabilitate young Jones, not to mention being surrounded by teenagers whose path had also led them to the harshness of a juvenile detention center. However, Jones vowed to turn his life around. Tyrone was released from juvenile detention at the age of 18. Growing up and watching his mother struggle to care for four boys as a single mom, Tyrone promised himself that
when I get married, I will be a husband to my wife and a father to my children. I will not abandon my family like my father did us.
Mr. Jones met and married his wife at age 19, and together they had a son, Tyrone Jones Jr. But life had other plans for Tyrone. He continued to seek employment that would allow him to earn appropriate wages to care for his family. However, mounting debt continued to haunt him. Tyrone believed that obtaining his GED while serving time in juvenile detention would allow him a fresh start. But what he found was that his past refused to let go of its grip. You've just heard the story of Tyrone Jones and his family. And before we get started, we're going to dive really deep into Mr. Jones's story. But allow me to introduce our guest before we get going. Just a moment here, and I'm glad that we are recording this because we get to go back and fix the things that we're messing up. And I wanted to make sure. Now, are you? I hope that I have stopped sharing my screen. Can you guys just see each other?
No, I can't see anyone. I just see you, Miss Panada.
Okay, so let me go and
Wait, I can see everyone. It just may be on speaker view that she's looking.
Okay, great. So let's just get this going again. So we just heard the story of Tyrone Jones and his family's opening story. And we're going to dive deep into Mr. Jones's story. But before we do that, I would like to introduce our panel today. I'm Manala D, your host for this broadcast, presenting on the behalf of the Women Woke Within. And we are talking about mass incarceration has a face. And today we are excited to have with us the Jones family. We have with us Miss Erica Smith, who is with us, a longtime friend of Mr. Jones. Roosevelt Jones is his eldest brother, and his son, Mr. Tyrone Jones. He also has two other brothers, Derek Jones, who is not with us today, and also a brother who is also incarcerated, Mr. Glenn Jones. Why don't we take the opportunity right now and just welcome the Tyrone Jones family to this broadcast. We're so glad that you guys are here today. Let me also take this opportunity to introduce Women Woke Within Coalition members. We have with us Katrina Butler, my co-host, and she's also the Contributory Coalition Affairs Director, and she is the founder of So Far, So Close and an owner of Different Souls, One Accord. And thanks to Katrina, she's also she's the sponsor of this program, of this broadcast today. Michelle Jones, she serves as the vice chair and she's our certified in-house paralegal. And she also is the podcaster of the Boss Lady Trucker MS. Then we have with us Miss Jenny Dumont. She's the correspondence and public information director, and she wears many hats as it relates to the work that we do. We don't have Miss Joanne Cash Owen. She's not with us today, but she is our nonprofit receivables director, and she's also the founder of Family Unification Network. I also do not see Charles Taylor, who's the in-house attorney for Prevail Water. He told me he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to be here, but that's okay. We have our paralegal, so we are ready to go. With us this evening as well, we have a very special guest that we are honored to have, Mr. Andy Hope Williams Jr., aka Hood Candidate. Now he serves as the ambassador excuse me, he serves as the ambassador for the United People of America. Now, he has a powerful story, and you will get to hear more about him as we move forward this evening. But for sure, you will hear a lot more about him because he is our special guest on Let's Talk About It, scheduled for January the 17th, 2025, and you do not want to miss that. So you need to stay tuned to our social media broadcast so that you get more information about that upcoming event, because it's going to be so good. Now, if you're joining us here on the Shift 99 via live streaming television, prepare to hear a compelling story. It is one of truth, endurance, and one that demonstrates what you will define as a lack of justice. Now, with the cardinal eye, imprisonment might be seen as capture. And in fact, I've used the term captured in a lot of my correspondence, but I've come to understand that the incarcerated are not captured, they were planted. Now it's time to release them and let God's people go, because they have work to do. And I don't know about you, but I can hear all across this country the echoing out of everybody, families and brothers and sisters, everybody saying, let my people go. And that's what we're here tonight to do, is to work to free Tyrone Jones. Now, before we get going and digging down and asking the family some questions, we want everybody, I want you to contact everybody you know, everybody that's listening, national, international, call someone and tell them to join us live on the Shift 99 on your Roku or Amazon Prime broadcasting on live streaming television, because the Tyrone Jones story will move hearts and open eyes. So with that, welcome to Mass Incarceration Has a Face, and it's the face of freedom. All right. So now we're going to get down and introduce ourselves and talk to the family and ask them some questions about what happened with Mr. Jones. So Roosevelt, you are Mr. Jones's eldest brother. And would you share with the audience what you remember of your childhood together? You know, what were your family dynamics like? Tell us about that. Give us a peek behind the scene.
First, thank you for taking the time to put forward the effort to get injustice from justice. The upbringing. Our upbringing was fairly decent to be raised by a single mother. You know, she did the best she could as a single black woman with 4 boys. You know, it wasn't an easy journey for my mother to deal with 4 boys by herself, but she did a beautiful job after looking over my life and looking at the lessons and the wisdom she installed into us that I personally came later on to start utilizing. You know, I started a rebellious life at an early age, being highly disruptive, disrespectful, and she would be tolerant and patient to the extreme. Her favorite words to me is a hard head makes a soft behind. You know, but she would always use them other words.
I heard that. Now, Erica, Roosevelt just shared a snippet of Mr. Jones's family life, but in the time that we have, we could not possibly delve into all the aspects of Mr. Jones' young life. Now, I understand that you met Mr. Jones at an early age. In fact, I think both of you guys were in middle school. So tell us how long you've known Mr. Jones and what type of student was he? Did he play sports or, and what was he like in school before he was sent to juvenile detention? We just heard in the video before that he was sent to juvenile detention until he was the age 18. So tell us, what was he like in middle school?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I met Tyrone. We both met at 12 years old, and we was in middle school together. We also grew up in the same neighborhood for a few years. Tyrone, he didn't play sports, but he was just a funny, caring, just a good-hearted young guy. You know, if he had it and you needed it, he had that type of personality. He was very sharing type person. So before going to juvenile, he just was a humble person. Um, I was very taken back by finding out that he had got into trouble and, he had to go and do his time in juvenile. So I didn't even much know that he got into trouble like that. I was like in shock. Like, what? What you doing in trouble? But yeah.
And in your interview, you said that he was very, he was highly intelligent in school.
Yes, he's very smart. He was very smart.
Okay.
Um, I don't know, it was just I was taken back by, his brother saying that he had to go to juvenile. And I'm like, what did he do? Like, very surprised. But he just was a caring person. He really was. He really was.
Got you. Now, Roosevelt, share with the audience what occurred when Mr. Jones first encountered the justice system for selling drugs at that early age. And because, of course, he was still a child. And do you believe that placing Mr. Jones in juvenile detention until he was 18, did it help him or did it hurt him? What do you think about that?
It really hurt because the system in Louisiana was not a system that gave any type of trades or any type of proper structure. It was like going to a gang environment. You had the Baton Rouge, the different Mississippi. They had all of these different youth from different parts of Louisiana inside of the place called LTI, and that's all they did was fight and rival. And so when he came home from doing that, Jose, it was coming home to a community flooded with drugs. That was the era when cocaine had first hit. And so it was plentiful. It was everywhere. And he came home to my corrupt lifestyle because I was at that time in the drug industry, involved in the illicit lifestyle. So I was not a decent influence on him when he came home. So a lot of what he came home to was more corruption, coming from a juvenile system to a more corrupt lifestyle. It wasn't that he came home to better guardians. He came home to me in a dysfunctional family environment. So it was kind of, juvenile didn't help him. It only enhanced what he was already going through.
Now, Tyrone Jones Jr., you are the only child of your father, right? So it must have been very difficult navigating life without your father being there. So share with the audience what you remember about your father when you were growing up. Share with us what you felt like after he was taken captive and planted in the prison system.
How y'all doing? I appreciate y'all having me today. But I remember my father always in my life being a great father to me. You know, he always made sure I was on track in school, made sure my head was on straight, looked over me, protected me, guided me in the right footsteps to be successful in life. You know, he was always there. You know, he always made sure I was on time to school. He would pick me up from school, help me with my homework, you know, things of that nature. Even when I played sports, he would always make sure I was going to practice. He would bring me, pick me up from practice, even help me with certain fundamentals when I did play sports at the time. And, you know, when I got arrested, it kind of hit home, hurt me. I didn't know what to do at the time, but he would always call and check up on me and made sure that I was always positive, had a good mindset, that everything's going to be okay. And then I just know mistakes happen. So everybody's not perfect.
I know that's right. That is absolutely right. Okay, now we're going to move on. But before we do, does anyone on the panel want to offer anything to the family, say anything to the family, welcome them, just say hi, whatever you want to say before we go to the next video roll?
Yeah, I just want to say I thank you all for showing up. I understand that this is not easy revisiting, you know, these times in your life where it can be challenging, hurtful, painful. So I just want to applaud you for, you know, unselfishly being there for Tyrone, to the family, and putting in all the work to make this happen.
Very good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to, you just heard the family, the Tyrone Jones family. Now we're going to listen to this story as it continues, the story of economic disenfranchisement. We're going to listen and unpack this on the other side.
In 1994, Tyrone made a decision that resulted in him being charged with simple robbery. He admitted his guilt, waived his constitutional rights, and accepted a guilty plea. He served 7 years in prison for this charge. After being released from prison, he decided he might find better opportunities in Georgia. In 2010, Mr. Jones left Louisiana and moved to Georgia, where one of his brothers resided. He believed that he could more easily find employment and start a new life for himself and his family there. However, for Tyrone Jones, DeKalb County, Georgia, became the place where his dreams of a new beginning faded into harsh realities. Obtaining work was more complicated than Tyrone imagined, and it was even more difficult because of his prison record. Every employment application he completed asked if he had served time in prison. His past was a great weight on him and kept him from the future he so desperately wanted for himself and his family. Thoughts of lack and poverty lured him once again into desperately trying to achieve the life his wife and child deserved. Most people Tyrone was acquainted with did whatever they could to care for themselves and their families, and included some of his own family members who also had criminal histories. In Georgia, the generational burdens that haunted Tyrone's mother and his past also continued to plague him and his family. He struggled to locate a good-paying job that would allow him to afford adequate housing and to put food on the table for his family. The threat of failing his family again continued to haunt him until one day he gave in to what seemed like a way to obtain the money his family so desperately needed. His brother Glenn had a friend named Tracy who knew of an individual who sold marijuana. Tyrone, his brother, and his brother's acquaintances decided to break into the drug dealer's house and take the money that they thought would be there since the individual sold drugs. They broke into the house, but the drug dealer was not there. There was only a woman and her children in the apartment. They decided to leave the house, but not before Tracy picked up a set of keys from the coffee table and took them with him. When a spokesperson for Women Woke Within asked Tyrone Jones if he regretted breaking into the residence, he stated,
Yes, we were wrong for breaking into the house. It did not matter that the person was a drug dealer. But What matters is that the truth be told and justice prevail. We did not have a weapon, no gun or anything. Yet, we were charged with armed robbery, and I was given life in prison with the possibility of parole. I received life because the recidivism law was used against me for a case that occurred over 17 years ago. That is not justice.
A spokesperson for the Women Woke Within Corporation said this about Tyrone Jones.
It seems to me that Mr. Jones has continually been forthcoming in taking responsibility for his actions.
All right. So before we unpack how economic disenfranchisement may have affected Mr. Jones's life, let us turn to Katrina Butler, a certified trauma support specialist. And Katrina, would you share your expert opinion of why Mr. Jones may have made the decisions that led him to become a captive planted in the penal system at an early age? And then again, of course, later, we just heard that story.
Yes, thank you. And before I begin, again, I just want to put out there, when you're dealing with individuals with trauma, you have to respect their perspectives. Even though you may feel that it happened a different way, you have to understand that this is what they went through and this is how it affected them. So their stories may or may not align with what you remember, what actually occurred, but it's their perspective and it's their story. So before I begin, I just want to make a note, in interviewing Mr. Jones, and I'm hearing across the board where everyone is saying, okay, when he came home from juvenile, what was unaware of that this stuff started way before he went to juvenile. Mr. Jones is dealing with developmental trauma disorder, meaning that at the very young age, as early as 4 years old, he is able to vividly reoccur those situations that happened in his life. Even though his mom did what she was supposed to do as a single mom out there working, taking care of her family, but it left the family, the children alone by themselves. And count after count, Mr. Jones remembers being left alone, even though his brothers were there, but incidents of walking out the house at 5 years old without his brothers knowing and staying out and coming back in. He remembers being lost, for a week to the point where he had to be in foster care because at 5 years old, he didn't know his mother's name, but he remembered the school. These are, and then at the tender age of 12, where you heard his brother, say that he was getting into his own mischief. And in Tyrone's mind, he said his brother was protecting him, didn't want him to get out, follow his footsteps. However, that led him wide open to look at other people in the neighborhood. And at the tender age of 12, he was introduced to cocaine. So this happened way before, these things were happening way before juvenile. And during the interview, he was very, very good. And he said he hid it. He even hid it from Erica. Erica had no idea these things were going on because he was so good at hiding it. He was good at hiding, selling drugs, getting the money. All these things was happening way before juvenile. So these are things right now because his mom stood up for herself during an abusive relationship and walked away from it, and which what she should have done. But he remembers the journey that led up to that point. So while his mind is developing, these things are being stamped. So when he is developing, as he's getting older, he's living out of these traumas, this flight or fight. And sometimes in life, because you would think after juvenile, like you would say, okay, well, why didn't you just go back? Why didn't you change your life? However, he was already a product of his environment. And just like his brother said, he came back right into that same environment and got right back on a horse and started doing the same thing all over again.
Wow, that is so interesting. Andy Williams, what would you like to add to that, Andy?
Hello everybody. Thank you for having me here. Are you being specific what I would like to add to what Sister Katrina said?
Yes, to that or anything you've heard so far.
Ooh, well, I'm 100% in agreement with Sister Katrina because the trauma, the trauma that's generational. So it just didn't start with our generation. It started, 3 or 4 generations ago, from the our generation, we call it post-incarceration syndrome.
Mm,
From Lady Dr. Joy DeGroy, she called it the post-traumatic slave syndrome. And it's I say that because the things that happened, 100 years ago, if you never get to the root of it, it's going to pass down from generation to generation, and we're not even aware of it. So, that's why I'm in agreement with it. And I will say to the other people on the panel, sometimes we should not hold ourselves so accountable for what this system has been designed to do. And
mm.
so often we like, well, we shouldn't have made this mistake. But listen, you can't even drive down the street with your tail light being out or something happening. So this not totally on us. We have become imprisoned in our own communities, so much so that we're imprisoned the way we think. We're thinking like we are enslaved. So that's what I'd add to it.
Absolutely. Do we have anyone else that want to add anything to this before we move to the next video? Because we got a lot to get through, but I do want to offer, yes, Miss Erica. Miss Erica, yes.
I do want to say Tyrone didn't do 7 years for that 1994 conviction. He did 2 years.
Okay, 2 years. Okay, all right.
Yes.
So I misunderstood the information. Okay, great. Anything else we want to anybody else want to add anything before we move forward? Okay, all right. All right, so we're going to now learn how the police restrained Mr. Jones, interrogated him, and then convicted him. So we're going to listen and then we're going to discuss it on the other side. So if you have anything else you want to talk about while I'm preparing this, you can go right on, Miss Butler.
Okay. So right now, as we're going to get, this is where the injustice is going on. Okay. We're going to hear about what led after the arrest, what led up to how Tyrone and his family has contacted me, and we work with Women Woke Within, and how we got to this place right now, showing the injustices, our criminal or legal justice system, how it treated a young man, and what went wrong.
A report of the case against Tyrone Jones and co-conspirators obtained by Women Woke Within concluded the following details in summary. As they were leaving the parking lot of the apartments, 2 police vehicles showed up and blocked them in. They were taken out of their car and the vehicle was searched. The police said they were looking for a black and chrome gun the victim had described. They were also looking for ski masks. Tyrone asked the officer why they were being handcuffed and detained, but never received an answer. A female officer finally responded and said that there had been a home invasion that took place in the apartment complex. They were held for 3 to 4 hours in the back seat of a police car until finally the police came back with a set of keys that Tracy had taken from the victim's apartment. No ski mask and no gun were found because they were never present. At that point, they were taken out of the patrol cars individually to be identified by the victim. None of them could be identified by face, clothing, or voice. She then stated that she was nearsighted and asked the detective if they could be brought closer. The detective rejected that request, and so nobody was identified. Subsequently, and despite the lack of a victim identification, they were taken to the detective headquarters and again interrogated. It was here that Detective Michael Hellerman told Mr. Jones that, quote, if I didn't confess to the crime, he was going to charge me with armed robbery, unquote. Detective Hellerman then left the room, came back, grabbed Tyrone's shoes, and compared them to the print on a photo that had been taken of the victim's apartment door. Later, he was booked into DeKalb County Jail and charged with armed robbery, along with other charges. Tyrone Jones was not the only person ever caught in Detective Hellerman's web. In 2010, Nathan Christopher Dwight, a young black man, was accused of armed robbery in Rockdale County. It was reported that Detective Hellerman, who is white, told Dwight that he had better come clean because an all-white jury that he would most likely face would see him as a straight-up N-word. The only thing that saved Mr. Dwight was video evidence of that crime. It took 8 years for prosecutors to dismiss the charges against Mr. Dwight. By that time, Detective Hellerman had resigned. Did Detective Hellerman leave the county of Rockdale and go to work in DeKalb County next? We know that Detective Hellerman in DeKalb County interrogated Tyrone Jones. What do you think?
Now, you heard the spokesperson for Women Woke Within indicated that Tyrone Jones at every turn, and we heard it for ourselves, at every turn, he told the truth about the role that he played. And it seems to me that Mr. Jones, as Katrina Butler mentioned, and Andy Williams, he was going through some trauma, and seems to me he was unconsciously asking for help at every turn, but it never came. So what we're going to do now, we're going to unpack what we learned in the previous story about what happened to Mr. Jones. And when I looked at his story, and just to let you know, when I looked at the summary of what happened to his court case, if he was really a person that was bad, they could have really got away with that. I mean, they told the truth. I mean, they were in the car by this time, so he was very open about what he did, and yet he still got life in prison for armed robbery, and that just doesn't make any sense. So, Katrina, would you please summarize the case of Nathan Christopher Dwight? Tell us about that story.
Yes, and I do want to add this, just to further just show how honest, Tyrone was. He did not know that Tracy had took those keys. He did not know that. It was not found out until the police searched the car, and he was surprised as well. He thought they were just leaving and going on about their business. But this case right now with with Nathan Christopher Dwight, this detective, Michael Hellerman, and he's been promoted. He is looked as a great detective with law enforcement. And this was the same detective that was on the case with Mr. Jones. And the same language, the same thing where he came in and he told Dwight, it was a robbery. However, even though Dwight was detained, he fought. And because there was nothing, no proof, no evidence that said that he was there, that anything led up to him, and he ended up winning his case. But the same tactics that he used with Dwight, he used on Mr. Jones, and basically said, okay, you're going in front of an all-white jury, and all you're going to be looked at is the N-word. Wow. And using that scare tactic to force them into a guilty plea. And that's what happened. And not only that, this case is linked. I don't know how, because the names are nowhere like it, but this case was somehow linked to Mr. Jones.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that Mr. Jones and Erica Roosevelt, one of you guys can tell us, he went to court, didn't he, on his case? I mean, he didn't take a plea, did he?
Oh, he went to jury, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No.
So he had a jury.
With the trial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He went to trial.
Okay, that's what I thought. So now let me ask now, what do you think happened? I'm a little confused, Roosevelt. Tell us why you think the court arrived at an armed robbery charge. And then you were living in Louisiana. So how did you discover that your brother had been arrested and all of this? And I was really confused about how they could possibly end up with an armed robbery charge when there was no gun found.
Well, the thing was, they took and looked at his past, mm-hmm. and they used his past as something to judge him on. So what happened was, in court, under the law, that was not supposed to be what they went to trial for, because the environment in Atlanta at that time was extremely negative towards people from New Orleans. Katrina had happened. There was a negative, I'm talking about the news constantly kept New Orleans people in the news about negative things. So it was so much negativity associated with people from New Orleans. And just, I'm talking about a young man who got on the stand, got caught in perjury. Police got caught lying. It's so much that stuff that took place in the trial that they were supposed to have a mistrial or throw the case out, but they didn't even pay attention or didn't care at all what was actually being presented in the case. So it was problematic from the get-go, you know. So there was nothing that was fair at all under no circumstances. The jury didn't even take but a few hours, come back completely guilty, and they didn't have no gun. All of the one police was caught lying, and the person who was an eyewitness, he got caught in perjury. It was a whole bunch of stuff, you know. But I don't know how they still came back with the conviction outside of that. The whole city's environment towards New Orleans people was like, I don't care what happened. New Orleans people did it, you know, and that's basically from my vantage point how I saw it. Just because they was from New Orleans, they didn't care what happened.
Oh, got you. Now I know that Andy Williams has to leave, but I want to just kind of get off script for just a second because I want to ask Mr. Brother Williams, what do you think about that? You know, they didn't find a gun at all. And I read in the script that they said, well, you know, they sat in the car so long they could have hid the gun. They neglected to say they had them in the back seat for 4 hours or so. So, you know, but they said they must have put it somewhere. But to me, if you don't have a body, then, you know, you can't prove somebody was killed. They didn't have a gun. So, and we're not attorneys here. We're not trying, we know, we want to understand from your point of view, Brother Williams, how could they possibly charge someone with armed robbery and no weapon is there?
Oh, so I'm gonna put this disclaimer out. I know most of the solution for this, at least in a step right forward. So I struggle when I gotta talk when I know we should just be doing this right now because we've tried all these other things before. If we move this way, we come at an angle that most of the time, they have not really seen this before. So at some point behind the scenes, I'll be able to pull that out.
All right.
But the reason why they can do what they do because we don't know how to show up.
Mm.
That's the truth. When you look back historically, they had the deacons of defense. You know, when they historically, and I'm just saying historically, what we've seen, Rosewood, they didn't go up. They didn't just allow it to happen. You had to come, you know, with the robes and everything else to try to get away with it. So the robes today have changed from the white ones to the black ones. That's why. So what we have to do is to be able to say, number one, you're not following your own instructions. Everything that you wrote out. And that's what we become educated. When it says, you know, people perish for lack of knowledge, it's just because we don't understand. We just don't know. And I'm saying this even to some of the people that are labeled attorneys. They've been taught not to know too. So we're not looking at some system that we're really attacking the system. These are, for better terms, it's a spiritual thing that's going on because it's passed down from generation to generation. Like I said about the post-traumatic, you know, slave syndrome, that's a spirit that's being passed down. So now what we have to do is to allow the spirit of wisdom and knowledge and understanding to manifest in the flesh to not only say, let my people go, but you have no jurisdiction or authority over our people.
Got
So
you.
that's the position that I'm holding on it. And when you don't have an injured party with a victim, you create something because the penal code is the same as the slave code and the black code.
Mm.
The same revenue is being generated the same way it was generated back then. So what we could do as together as a people, I like to use this 3-point plan: litigate, legislate, and run for office. If you go back down to South Carolina, 1880s, 1890s, a lot of the Congress was our ancestors. I like to call us Coppertone. Okay. We were sitting in the Senate. We were sitting in the House. We need to resurrect that and go back to that. And now we're able to hold these elected officials accountable for violating their oath for infringing upon our rights as people, not property.
I love that. Love it. Love it. Absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much. And this, again, Brother Williams and the Williams will be with us on January the 17th on Let's Talk About It. And I know he has to leave early because there's so much more we want to hear him talk about. Now, Erica, with that, now, I'm sorry, not Erica, but Tyrone, Tyrone Jr. Now, Mr. Jones, now he'd been out for a while. He'd been home, and your father's home. Then he's arrested again. So, share with us what you remember about this arrest. What happened? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? Were you in Louisiana? Did you go to Georgia? Did you go to court? What happened with that?
Now, when my father got arrested, I was actually 13 years old at the time. I was a sophomore in high school. I was still living in Slidell, Louisiana. So I really ain't know too much what was going on till like halfway through my high school year. My mom kind of like not told me about it at the beginning because she didn't want that to really distract me from school or whatnot. But I found out towards the end of my sophomore year what had happened. And I didn't understand how he was charged with armed robbery with a gun and given a year plus 5 with no type of evidence or no weapon at the scene or present at trial.
I understand.
Anila, so I just want to point out in Georgia, and when you're looking at these charges, that you can be the armed robbery and all that, they slide that word in their intent. They slide that word in their intent. So intent, we know intent does not mean guilty. However, because that is such a broad word, they're able to dance around it and make it move and do what it do, to their benefit. So in Georgia, unfortunately, we have these words like that in our laws that the law enforcement utilizes to continue to keep people captive and use the prison for an answer all, especially in Mr. Jones' case, where he was looking at as a habitual offender. He was a troublemaker. So it's almost like, okay, well, he's no benefit to society. Let's just get him and move him out the way, throw him away, like so many of our people that's inside the prison walls now.
That's right. And as Brother William said too, is that we got to go back and say your rules don't say this. How are you going to use armed robbery? And we're going to take a look at that in a few seconds. Jennifer, you have anything you want to add? Anybody else have anything you want to add about this? Yes.
I did. I just wanted to mention, I've come across it actually a lot. But in the state of Georgia, you can actually be charged with armed robbery if the victim or the dwelling residents, if anyone within that vicinity, believes that even at one point it's off their belief. So you really don't have to run in a store with a gun or into someone's house. I mean, if someone were to put their hand in their pocket or touch their leg at any point during an armed robbery, I mean, the law can say, hey, this is armed robbery. The victim had saw you touch or put your hand in your pocket. So at one point there was a gun. So basically, the system is built off what other people insinuate or, what they might think, but does it make it the actual intention? No, it does not. And I mean, it's just broken. Honestly, it is completely broken.
Got you. Anybody else want to add anything to that before we actually go and look at some of the definitions that they have put in their books of what armed robbery is? Okay, if not, what we're going to do then is we're going to take a closer look at the Tyrone Jones court case, and we're going to listen to this, and we're going to have the discussion on the other side. And if you guys want to just keep talking as I transition for a second, Katrina, if you need.
And this, as we unpack all of this is a clear picture how the injustice of the life sentence, how that falls into play. How there's never should have been a life sentence in this case.
Take a closer look at the case. As stated by a Woman Woke Within spokesperson, Mr. Jones admitted to his involvement in the offense. However, he has consistently argued against some of the charges that he was accused of, i.e., armed robbery aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm. Records indicate that Mr. Jones filed appeals to the charges, and the argument of citation of authority in support of the motion to vacate void judgment was compelling. Unsurprisingly, at the end of the day, Judge Robert P. Malice, Superior Court Judge Tangela M. Berry, District Attorney Robert D. James, Scott Duplantier, Public Defender, Barry Hazen, Paid Attorney, and Rodney Zell, Paid Attorney, refused to yield their positions. The efforts to appeal the outrageous charges against Tyrone Jones were left to stand. Left to stand even though the court was aware that Detective Michael Hellerman had used intimidation and racial slurs while interrogating those in his custody. They knew this because he used the same tactics in the case of Nathan Christopher Dwight, who was also sentenced to life in prison but later had his charges dismissed. In addition, the courts allowed Detective Hellerman to use a 17-year-old case to convict Tyrone Jones under the recidivism law. Finally, in the state's order to dismiss Mr. Jones' pro se motions, they said the motions are meritless, barred by res judicata, and untimely. In other words, the verdict against Tyrone Jones is final, and repeated reexamination of his case is not in the society's best interest. In short, this is the meaning of the legal term res judicata. The courts issued this decision even in the face of the facts as follows. A gun was not found, ski masks were not found, clothes that were alleged as being worn were not found, the witness did not identify the subjects. Despite the absence of physical evidence linking a weapon to the crime, Tyrone found himself in prison and charged with armed robbery. Mr. Jones may be a victim of circumstance who made terrible choices, but there's no way he should be charged with armed robbery and subsequently serve life in prison under the recidivism law. Amidst this darkness, Tyrone Jones continues to thank God and have hope. Through counseling and rehabilitation programs, Tyrone confronted the demons of his past and charted a new course for his future. Tyrone and his family continue to seek his freedom, and despite the odds stacked against him, he refuses to let his circumstances define him. Tyrone Jones is determined to rise above the ashes of his past and emerge a changed man.
All righty then. So Tyrone Jones, he's been arrested, indicted, is appearing in court. So let's unpack what happened with him. He's you have the same detective that was on another case that in fact charged this other person, Christopher, with armed robbery. He was going to get life in prison too, but someone that they found out that wasn't true. The same detective, now he goes over somewhere else, over to DeKalb County, and does the same thing or at the same thing to Mr. Jones. And I'm wondering, Roosevelt, when you attended court, or did you attend court? And if you did, share what you remember with the audience. What was the court atmosphere like? Was there any people of color seated as jurors, or what was it like there?
I can't exactly remember. I knew it had black and white on it, but I could say that the actual city in itself, as far as the citizens of Atlanta in that area, had biases against people from New Orleans. I had been living in Atlanta for a little while, and I actually ran a company out there. And as long as I had a 504 number on my business cards, I didn't get no business. So one day someone told me to change my number, and I did it. And business changed for me the day I did it. So because of what happened with Katrina and the different constant news media outlets on how they painted pictures of people from New Orleans, made it extremely hostile. So the jury that was picked from that population. That's so right. We didn't get a fair handshake on the jury, so they made the decision, and that decision wasn't made from what they witnessed on the stand and the people that came before them, because if that was the case, it was supposed to be a not guilty verdict because the police got caught in a lie. The witness who was said to be a victim had been previously convicted himself in perjury for lying on the stand. So everything that they had outside of, you know, the footprint on the door, which was actually his, we never denied that portion. It's just the actual charge of him being charged with armed robbery.
That's right.
And that's the reason he went to trial. You know, I was trying to get him to do a plea. He said, I didn't have no gun. And he stuck. That's the reason he went. If they would have took any and lowered those charges to something else, they would have accepted it because they were guilty of some type of wrongdoing. But the actual armed robbery is what made him have a problem with it.
Yes, and you know, and we're going to get to that a little bit further on, but I'm just going to talk about it right now. To me, okay, I admit to something, but it doesn't mean I should want to take a plea. I should still have my right to go to court if I want to, and not going. And I know that a lot of time what they will do, and like and even in my case, what they did is like, oh, if you want to go to court, well, we're going to give you this many years because you want to go to court. You're going to, so therefore, when we get in court, this is what we're going to tell the judge that that we want to give you, and most likely the judge is going to give it to you because you would not take a plea. I totally agree with Mr. Jones. Why should you take a plea for something you did not do? I don't care if the years were going to be shorter. You just don't want to do that. So let me ask you, because we see all these other people go to court and they get a bond hearing, all this. Erica, so was Mr. Jones afforded a bond after being arrested? And if so, how much was the bond? And did he make bond? And how long was it before he was free before he had to go back to court and actually go to trial?
No, he was denied a bond. So he told me that he actually sat for 6 months before trial.
Wow, he was denied. And what was the reason for them denying his bond? I mean, he was a millionaire and he could have a jet or something. He could just fly away, he had a passport. Why did they say they denied his bond?
He didn't tell me. And I'm quite sure they didn't tell him.
Wow, wow,
So, yeah.
wow.
Yeah, most of the time when it depending on the length of time that you're in the state, then they look at that and see if you're a flight risk, and thinking that you're going to get in bond and flee the state.
Like they can't come and get you. I mean, it's not that far. Louisiana is not that far away.
Right. And that's true. But those are just some things that they look at when they consider people for bonds, how many times they've been in trouble, if they're truly from the state, if they have relatives outside of the state, things like that, which would look at you as a risk.
Well, I know, I understand they look at it like that, but we've seen some people that got jets and all kinds of stuff and could easily leave this country and they get a bond. So, and not just one, it's a lot of them. So therefore, they can say the system will tell us that's what it is, but
right. And I just want to piggyback real quick on, his brother was saying, the whole territorial thing. And we do know, even someone from Atlanta going down to more in a southern spot of Georgia, that same treatment is being used. So when you're not from this state, then yes, you are looked at as an alien, as you're not wanted, and the judges will let you know and tell you that this is not welcomed here. I've heard it firsthand. You're coming down here with this stuff, and they really discredit that when you're not from their area.
Got you. But Jennifer, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to speak to that too, because during my own personal experience, I'm actually originally from New York. Like when I came to Georgia, I just thought I was the worst person in the world because that's what they made me to believe because I was from New York. I can't even begin to explain to you how many times on both the news and during my court hearing that they actually had to bring up the fact that I was from New York and they had to paint a certain picture of how people from New York are. I came from like New York by Canada, so like they were geographically completely wrong anyway. But yeah, they painted me as like some fast-paced, manipulative, like potentially violent person. So I can totally relate to that, and I believe that 1,000%.
I guess that's why Georgia has more people in prison than most any other state.
That's That's for sure.
Anybody else want to say anything before we move into talking about, we're gonna actually talk about the laws and things like that, and we've got the laws. We want to read and define those, what we researched on the system and found, read those, and then we're going to talk about those things. Now, I want to just get made for the record, we are not attorneys, and we want the record to show that we're not offering legal advice nor interpretation of the law. We advise our viewers to seek legal counsel if they need legal clarification of the law. However, we do provide participatory defense training and act as lay advocates relating to an individual's constitutional rights and liberty. Now, Mr. Jones informed Women Work Within that he was charged under the recidivism law. The following is the information that we were able to locate regarding that law and various other laws. Now, if anyone out there watching this broadcast has information different than what we are about to share, you can contact us at womenworkwithin@gmail.com. But this is what we have found, and we want to share that, and then we're going to talk about it. And Miss Michelle Jones, she's going to share OCGA 17-10-7 regarding the recidivism law. Miss Jones, Sister Jones, please do your thing.
Yes, indeed. Okay, the law code 17-10-7A reads, if someone has one prior felony conviction, prosecutors have authority to file notice asking the judge to sentence that person to the maximum time allotted for their crime. Upon this notice, the judge sentenced the defendant to undergo the longest period prescribed for the punishment of the subsequent offense of which he or she stands convicted. However, the trial judge may, in his or her discretion, probate or suspend the maximum sentence described for the offense. It also is important to remember that the state has to first notify the defendant of its intention to seek a conviction against the code 17-10. It states if the state fails to notify the defendant prior to the trial, the judge cannot impose this recidivist sentencing. And this is case Mays versus State, 262 Georgia 90, if you want to pull up that case and take a look at it.
Wow, thank you. And this also falls under the 3 strikes rule as well, doesn't it? And if so, please read that rule for us too.
Okay, according to Georgia's 3 strike rule, the second part of the statute, commonly known again as the 3 strikes rule, under this section, any person convicted of 3 felonies shall, upon conviction for such 4th offense or for subsequent offenses, serve the maximum time provided and shall not be eligible for parole until the maximum sentence has been served. Therefore, a person convicted of the 3 strikes rule is not allowed to be released early. This person must serve every day of his or her sentence.
Thank you.
Again, okay.
I'm sorry, keep going.
I can go ahead. Okay. Again, it must be noted that the defendant does not have to be sent to jail. They can still get sentenced to probation. And this is according to court case Pritchard versus State. And it is the judge's discretion. The judge can choose whether or not to sentence someone to the maximum or the minimum. Wow. The judge can make that decision.
Wow, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, let me ask the Jones family. First to Roosevelt, and then Tyrone Jr., and then, of course, to Ms. Smith in that order. Is there any evidence anywhere that the state filed a notice that it was their intention to seek a conviction against Mr. Jones under the recidivism law? I know I just messed that word up. And is there any evidence that the state notified the judge of such notice? So there are 2 things that's supposed to happen here. The state was supposed to notify Mr. Jones, and then the the state was also supposed to notify the judge. Did you guys find anything in writing that anybody notified Mr. Jones, or that anybody notified the judge that, oh, we're gonna seek the recidivism law on Mr. Jones?
Nope, it was not mentioned in the courts during the trial procedures or anything that they would double bill him. We had knowledge that that was capable of possibly capable of happening, but it wasn't mentioned by the DA side or anything like that.
Wow.
It's just that we knew that because of our previous understanding of the laws of how Louisiana laws rock and roll. I didn't know that it applied to other states because we're in Louisiana under Napoleon law. So we thought that those laws we were under did not take precedence in Atlanta, Georgia.
Got you. Okay, Tyrone?
No, ma'am. I wasn't informed about anything about the law at all. I didn't think about any evidence that they had.
No, speaking to Tyrone, he told me that Mr. Duplanty, the public defender, had verbally told him he believed that the state was going to try to use the recidivists against him, but he was not given a written notice, and it was not documented by a court reporter.
Okay, so he told him that he believed this was going to happen. So you're
Yes.
saying that he was notified,
It wasn't in a written notice.
but he was notified. And so you said
He
he
was just
notified him.
verbally, they had spoke about it.
Yes. Okay.
Verbally.
I thought that when we talked that you said that, I didn't know that he was verbally notified. But then
No. What I'm saying, his public defender spoke to Tyrone, spoke to him and said that he believed the state is going to try.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But he has to be notified with a written notice.
And he
And
wasn't.
he didn't receive that. No.
Okay. And how about, do you know of anything in writing to the judge?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, so let me go to the lay advocates now, and to our paralegals and everyone. Is there a time limit on how many years the courts can go back and use the recidivism law? What's because after all, I understand that first, not the juvenile, because that should have been sealed. I understand that that was 17 years ago that Mr. Jones served time for that simple burglary. So why would they? It was a simple burglary at that time. How could they use that law?
Now, according to my research, I wasn't able to find out to get that information as far as if there's a limitation on how many years they could go back and incorporate the Recidivism Act or sentences, excuse me. So I wasn't able to locate that.
Okay.
The three strikes rule
Mhm.
basically doesn't have a it doesn't have a time limit. It
But
just
when you think about it, he didn't have 3 felonies though, really, because one was juvenile, right?
right. If it was his juvenile, if the juvenile case was thrown out, which it should have been thrown out or sealed, then that one should not have counted as part of the 3 strikes rule.
That's right.
And that's, based on my interpretation.
Okay, Katrina, you were trying to say something?
Yeah, so yeah, I didn't find out, same way with Ms. Jones, I didn't find any time frame where it where it elapsed. So therefore they can pull it up at any time and use it. And what happens is even with the juvenile case, if that juvenile case falls in the like same criminal pattern, they can try to use it against you as well. Now, the 3 strikes, you're out now. Technically, even though this is wrong, if they use Nathan's case, that would have been his 3rd strike.
Okay.
So you're talking about the juvenile case, Nathan, and now here. That's the 3. And looking at him, and that's probably why, even though they were wrong, by using Nathan's case, even though that was wrong, they used it against him to make it seem like he was a habitual offender, which he was not.
So wait a minute, let me make sure I understand. So what you're saying is you're not saying that Mr. Jones had anything to do with the Nathan case. You're just comparing the Nathan case to Mr. Jones's case.
Right. Well, it was also used against him. And Erica, can you go into a little bit, how does that Nathan case, when Tyrone, and make sure that we're saying this correctly? I know it's the same investigator. However, how does it tie into Mr.
I think that Mr. Jones
No,
did that case only to show us that
right.
same detective had
Okay.
done this before. Yeah, he had nothing to do
Yeah,
with the Nathan case.
Okay.
yeah.
So they
It's
didn't
just a
put,
comparison.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
okay,
just a
okay, so just to
yeah,
tie in the investigator in
Yeah, just
right,
the
saying the
same
investigator.
tactics.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
right.
so I'm sorry, I informed, but still with the juvenile, like sometimes like what will happen, even though, especially in Tyrone, did he ever get his juvenile records sealed? Does anyone know in the
They're supposed to
family?
automatically be sealed, aren't they?
Mm,
And
some,
Yeah, they wasn't using the juvenile case in this particular instance. They was using the adult previous armed robbery case
right.
as the actual case they was gonna double bill him on.
And the only reason we said that we talked about the 3 strikes rule because I wanted you guys to see that it couldn't have fallen under the 3 strikes rule. That is what I'm saying, because there wasn't 3 felonies at
Yeah,
all.
it was only one. It was the only reason it was only like 5 days from being unable to be used from his last armed robbery conviction.
But he didn't
So
have an armed robbery conviction before. It was a simple burglary, is what when I looked at what he was charged with when he went to prison for the 2 years. What I found was a simple burglary charge.
I don't think so.
yeah,
I think it was an armed robbery, which gave them the ability to double
right,
bill him
right.
on the actual charge, because we were trying to hold the actual trial date, push it back to the
So it
time
wouldn't fall.
so it wouldn't be able to be usable even if they were convicted. That's the only reason they didn't take the plea, because Tyrone was concerned with the double bill. So
Okay.
if they wouldn't have had the actual double bill in the way, he would have took the plea.
Okay, got you. So let me make sure I understand. So the first time when he went in, you said he wasn't 8 years, Erica. You said he was only for 2 years and something. That was armed robbery too, or was that simple burglary?
No, no. Can I say something?
Sure.
Can I say something?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
waiting.
I'm actually looking at the paperwork. He was guilty. He pled guilty for simple robbery in 1994.
That's what I thought it was.
That's what it was.
So it was so he wasn't even charged. So there was no 3 strikes rule at all. I just wanted to make sure we get that
No,
there was no 3 strikes rule. And what they did is went back and used a case that he'd already served time for over 17 years ago and charged them under recidivism. Is what they did, which is what I'm saying that just doesn't make any sense to me. Let's take a closer look.
Yeah, it does. But like you said, you're talking about peers and jury, and this is how they try to trap you, just by saying robbery, simple arm, but it's robbery. It's saying that it's still in the same family crime, and that's how they trapped him. Then and they'll make it seem like, okay, well, even though it was 17 years ago, that he still has not learned and had a different, he's still in the same, his mindset is still in that same criminal mindset, and that's where the injustice is.
There is injustice for sure. Anybody else want to say anything about that before we move to look at exactly taking a closer look at how armed robbery is defined in the state of Georgia? And Ms. Jones is going to read that for us. So if you guys have anything else you want to say about what we just said, let's do that, because I know we are so close on time, but we got to get through this because I think it's so important. So just for us, Ms. Jones, read the definitions for armed robbery. What has the state of Georgia said that it is? As soon as you get off mute.
The law code for armed robbery in Georgia is 16-8-41. And it reads, a person commits the offense of armed robbery when, with intent to commit theft, he or she takes property of another person from the person or the immediate presence of another by use of an offensive weapon or any replica, article, or device having the appearance of such weapon. The offense of robbery by intimidation shall be a lesser included offense in the offense of armed robbery.
So then my question is,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. And B states a person convicted of the offense of armed robbery shall be punished by death or imprisonment for life, or by imprisonment for not less than 10, no more than 20 years.
Did you say death?
Punished by death or imprisonment for life, or by imprisonment for not less than 10, no more than 20 years.
And we're talking about armed robbery.
Armed robbery.
So now you see some of the laws that we gotta, I'm telling you, women work within. We gotta come together, because if they have a law in the book talking about you can go steal. I mean, come on, death. So now he did not. I go right back to say, no one. There was nothing. I'm gonna ask the family this. Did anyone say that they thought that he might have had a gun, or that he put his hands in his pocket, or put his hand? I mean, I didn't see anything in the summary that I read that would raise up to the level of armed robbery. Now, we're not saying that he didn't do something, but we're saying it doesn't raise to the level of armed robbery. So asking Eric, asking the Brother Roosevelt, did the
No,
court?
the court was not able to produce a gun. There was not the guy who was on the sister never took the stand. It was her brother that took the stand. He never said he witnessed a gun. So
I think there's no gun, but how about, did he say he have a rock? Did he have a bottle? Did he put his hands in his pocket?
they were using the sister statement in it, but she never came to trial. So
woman that was in the house with the two children never came to trial?
No, the brother took the stand. The one who was in the back, they said was in the back room hiding.
And did the brother say that he had a gun, had anything, a weapon, a rock, a bottle, anything?
No, he said he heard him say it, but they never witnessed it.
Wow, see, that's what I'm saying. So, so it seems to me that the court has some choices here, guys. Now, Mr. Jones told the truth about what occurred that night, but they chose to charge him with armed robbery instead of simple burglary or something like that. Could it be that the charge of armed robbery would serve to lock another brother up for life? We're not attorneys, and we're just asking the question. Now, when you listen to the definitions of the charges that we believe would have more accurately describe what Mr. Jones said happened. Look at these charges. Let Miss Jones again read these charges, these laws. And these laws, these things may fit. I don't understand how they, but again, this is we live in the state of Georgia.
Right. In Georgia, burglary laws within OCGA 16-7-1 define this offense as the act of entering or remaining in a building, structure, vehicle, or railroad car with the intent to commit a felony or theft inside. Aggravated assault in Georgia refers to a situation where a person commits an assault with intent to murder, rape, or rob another person, or uses a deadly weapon or instrument to cause serious bodily harm. It is a serious criminal offense and can result in felony charges. A person commits the offense of simple assault when he or she either attempts to commit a violent injury to another person, or commits an act which places another in reasonable apprehension of immediately receiving a violent injury.
Wow. So again, Mr. Jones admitted to his illegal behavior.
Mm-hmm.
In the report, he revealed to women woke within that Detective Hellman told him, and I quote, "If I didn't confess to the crime, he was going to charge me with armed robbery." And it seems to me, my personal opinion, that
Mm-hmm.
Hellman came through with his threat because he was charged to admit that he had a gun or something like that. So he came through with what he wanted to do to him. And even though Mr. Jones admitted to being wrong, did he not have a right to trial? It doesn't seem that the law punishes a person who chooses to have their day in court. Is there a written rule somewhere or some law somewhere that says that if you choose to go to court, the state has a right to deviate from established law and charge you in the manner in which they choose? Let me hear your thoughts. And I know we don't have a lot of time, so keep it brief for me. But what do you think about that? I mean, you just heard Ms. Jones read the definitions that they gave us. They put that in the book. Mm-hmm. But they're not even going by their own laws. And I'm trying to understand. And I hear you guys tonight, and it sounds like sometimes we just kind of reason away what they do to us, and we say, well, they do it because of so and so. But if we had a really good lawyer, I guess paid them a lot of money, they would use what the written law. Mm-hmm. They would use the written law so that you wouldn't have to be charged with armed robbery. So talk to me about it. Do you think that they're deviating from what they wrote in the law?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question, Brother Roosevelt, since you were in the incident reports, was it ever noted that there was a brother in the house when that happened?
Yes, the brother took the stand.
No. In the incident reports, was it noted, Mr. Hellman, was it written down at any time in his report, in his investigation, while he was making the notes, as he was getting the testimony of the sister? Was it anything written down that's saying that there was the brother was in the house?
I personally didn't read what you're saying. I'm only on
this is my issue with this case, okay? And what's my discomfort with this case. A lot of times, yeah, we're looking at, the prisons, we're looking at the DAs and the judges and everything, but we are not paying attention, really paying attention to these investigators, like the dirty Mr. Hellman, okay? Where he sat up there, he was putting other things. We don't know, we do know in Georgia, I do know this for a fact, that the judges and the DAs and the attorneys, they meet regularly, they have meetings, they discuss cases. So my thing is, what we need to do, like Mr. Williams was saying before he left, is that we have to make sure that the things that they are presenting in court is not things that's just made up or that they're pulling from their back pocket. Because the fact of it is, I don't understand, if he was in the back room, and even if he was in the house, and even if he was hiding, he was not a witness to what went on. So he should never have been able to take the stand if he did not see and put eyes on the three individuals. He may have heard conversations, but that is not hearing a conversation is not enough to say that somebody had a gun in their hand. The second thing that I want to say is they use these entrapment words like intent, like I said, like appearance, like I said. These are words that pulls you down the rabbit hole and you cannot get out. Because just like Jennifer said, these are things where it's based off of somebody's belief. Mm-hmm. And when belief is not supposed to hold any weight in a legal courtroom, it's supposed to be factual evidence.
And what did we learn when we had on the Let's Talk About It, we had Elizabeth Best on with us. Mm-hmm. And she talked about that's why it's important that you file that. And what is that document, Ms. Jones Michelle, what is that document that we're supposed to file before you go to appeal you file another document. So what you're doing with this particular document, you're going back and saying, wait a minute, you guys made some mistakes in my case, and let's talk about that. And I can't remember what that document is, but those are those things, and a lot of us miss it. And that's what she's talked about. That was the most important thing that you do, because when you file that what is it, appeal?
Notice of appeal. Are you referring to the notice of appeal so a person can appeal their conviction?
But it's a notice of not the conviction. It's the one. Well, you do the notice, but it's something before, and I'll send it out. I can't remember, but that's why it's important that you go back, because the thing that you just said, Sister Butler, is that right there. If he would have gone back and filed that particular document, he could have said, "Wait a minute, this guy wasn't a witness." And you can bring up the discrepancies in the case, and that's why it's important that we know about the stuff and know what to do, because if we don't, then we miss the windows of opportunity.
Right.
And also think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Excuse me one second.
But not. Oh,
Go ahead. Okay.
I was gonna say, me go where you go.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just gonna say, but yeah, that's why they put you in the position of like no bond, because how in the world can you possibly fight a criminal case while you're in jail? Like, you have no resources, you have no opportunity. And I mean, it gets even crazier than, the guy in the back room said he was there. I mean, I saw an actual conviction where a district attorney convicted someone off saying, I believe you thought. How do you know what someone is thinking? This person was sentenced based off the district attorney wrote literally, we believe you thought, or I believe you thought. Like, you can't see what someone's thinking. So, I mean, it just, they're really good at what they do here. That's all I gotta say. They are good, honey.
We better when we know how to go back and use the law that they put out there. Miss Sister Jones, Michelle, what would you want to say before we?
I was just getting ready to respond to what Miss Katrina stated in regards to the state using the law to prove their case. It's good that defendants should know the law for themselves in order to help their attorneys. Mr. Jones did have an attorney to help him appeal his case, correct? Am I correct? However, that attorney didn't do service, did not give Mr. Jones great service. His service was ineffective because he allowed the state to use or to charge. I don't know if he objected to the state charging Mr. Jones with the armed robbery. There are other lesser charges that could have been Mr. Jones could have been charged with. But when a person has, I don't believe it's the money that makes a greater attorney. I honestly believe it's a person's heart. You have to look beyond. There's some great attorneys who will do pro bono or help someone out or do their best in representing their client, regardless of money or if they are appointed by the courts. So his appeal attorney failed him on that appeal, because a lot of things could have been appealed on Mr. Jones's case.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I looked at and what we found is the courts, in denying the appeals of Mr. Jones, they used the term, is it pronounced res judicata? They used this legal term to tell Mr. Jones that they were through with this matter. And here's a definition of that term. And this is important because that term is not normally used in a felony case. So read that definition if you would, Ms. Jones, and then we gotta get out of here.
The definition of res judicata it is just for a court to sentence a person to life in prison and then use a term commonly, the definition. Let me get the definition. I apologize.
It's okay.
Okay. Law code, Georgia law code on res judicata.
It's a legal doctrine that, yeah, go ahead.
It's derived from a Latin phrase meaning a matter judged. It's codified under Section 11 of the Civil Procedure Code. This doctrine stipulates, that once a competent court has given a final decision on the matter, the same issue cannot be re-litigated between the same parties in any subsequent proceedings. So basically, it's final once they use res judicata.
But this term is also known as a claim preclusion, and is commonly it's a common law principle used in civil litigation. So I was surprised that they would use this particular rule in this case, because it's not normally used in civil. And that's what you were talking about, Katrina and Jennifer and Ms. Jones. They do this. They just threw that word out there and say, oh, this matter's over. And then they use that term, but that term is not even normally used in civil litigation. And so those are all the kinds of things that when you go back and you appeal your case and you go back before that judge and you show and you go in there strong, or someone goes in there strong to show them what all the errors they made.
They made a lot.
Yeah, that was bad in this case. And the reason why are we talking about these terms? Why are we sharing the definitions? Because we are hoping that someone out there has the heart, picks up this case, and help Tyrone Jones get out of prison, because he does not deserve to be serving a life sentence in prison. He doesn't deserve it. You look at what we presented here today, the rules, the laws that the state made, and we're saying what those laws mean. This man, Tyrone Jones, should not be serving life in prison for something he did not do. It just doesn't make any sense. And I know we're running out of time, but before we end our broadcast tonight, I want to ask the family, Roosevelt Jones, Tyrone Jones, and then Erica Smith, I want you to look directly in the camera and speak to the Georgia Parole Board. Take a few minutes to tell them why you believe Mr. Jones, who is serving life in prison, has been there for at least 14 years, why should he be released?
I believe he should be released because he's reformed. His spirit, his mind, his attitude, everything that I hear when I hear him speak to me is not the Tyrone that I grew up with as a brother. I know he's a changed individual, and the time that he's doing is not going to do any good to him. It's only going to hurt him in the long run. He has a family to come home to. So I know that if he is paroled, he'll make a decent citizen in society, and he could bring his skills, which is the top chef in the world, home to help service to humanity that he can service. He's the best cook I know.
Woo! We need him home then, because I would love it.
He can get down. So I can't wait till he get home so we can get some of that fabulous cooking that he do. And I promise him I will help him get him a restaurant. So when he come home, it ain't about coming home to a job. It's coming home to create a job.
Woo! Love that. Now, Mr. Tyrone Jones Jr.
I think my father should be released from prison because he is a changed man. And I know he is willing to do the right thing when he do decide to come home or when they decide to free him. But at the time when my dad was convicted, it was a very important time in my life. And, and I needed my father to be there right there by my side. We had lost so much time. Time had already went by. He had missed my high school graduation, me going off to college, me purchasing my first car, me also buying my first apartment, which I knew he would have been proud of me of doing, because he always told me about doing the right thing and always making him and my mom's proud. But I also feel like he paid his debt to society, and I also believe that he deserves a second chance at life. So when he do come home, we can build and live the best life we can, the right way.
Oh, I love that. And Miss Smith, Erica Smith, look into the camera and talk to the parole board for us.
I feel Tyrone should be released because he has a changed mindset. He has devoted his life to Jesus Christ, who is his Lord and Savior. I feel that there are other people in this world that does commit heinous crimes and they are given a second chance at life to come back out and just live a productive life. And I feel why Tyrone can't, why he can't get that chance to be with his family, to be a productive citizen, why he can't get a chance to, he can't never get back those time that he lost. But going forward in life, I know for a fact Tyrone can make a difference. If people only really knew Tyrone the way we know Tyrone, Tyrone has wrote 3 books while he's been incarcerated. He has a book, one title, From Darkness to Light, that is going to be published. He has several certificates while he's doing his time so he could be productive, so he can regain his freedom, hopefully one day. So that is why I know for a fact Tyrone is going to do amazing things. He's going to do amazing things. Like his brother said, cooking. He also want to be involved in the youth ministry with his brother. He also want to do things with his son or his real estate business. He has goals, he have skills, he have talent. This is why I think, and I know, not think, I know, one day Tyrone is going to be free. Thank you.
No problem. And listen, guys, we're not going to put that out there in the future one day. Because when you put it out there in the future one day, then it's going to be out there one day. We're saying that Tyrone Jones is home right now. That's what we're saying. He's
All right, Miss Arnala, I like that.
heard the definition of the term res judicata. And I want to ask our audience joining this broadcast nationally and internationally to consider this question. And there are so many people watching us this evening, and this is great. Is it just for a court to sentence a person to life in prison and then use a term commonly used in civil litigation to say that we have heard enough from you and that a re-examination of the same dispute is not in the best interest of the society? This is not a damn dispute. This is someone's life, and this is a human life, and that human life has a name, and his name is Tyrone Jones. And it's my opinion, and it's the opinion of Women Woke Within as well, is that, and we're not advocating that Tyrone did not do something wrong. We're not saying he's not guilty of something. He admitted that himself. He said that, hey, I did this, I did that, but he is not guilty. He's not guilty of armed robbery. And that charge of simple and it possibly could have been a charge of simple burglary that Mr. Jones was sentenced to. And then he was charged over 17 years ago for simple burglary. And that charge 17 years ago, it's all over. From my understanding, no one told the judge that they were considering doing this. He just kind of mentioned it to Mr. Jones, but never put anything in writing. And so therefore, he should not have been charged under the recidivism law to obtain a life sentence. That should not have happened. But we know possibly why it happened, because you had the same detective who tried to do it to someone else and didn't get away with it. He got away with it with Mr. Jones, and that is unfortunate. I'm Anala D, your host, thanking the Shift Network for broadcasting the Tyrone Jones story on behalf of Women Woke Within, and thanking you for joining us. Women Woke Within asks that you visit their website at www.womenwokewithin.com and become a member. It's at no charge. And while you're there, click on the link to end mass incarceration. This link will lead you to their fundraising platform. And once you're there, please consider contributing so that the work may continue to release those who were planted in prison and are now being held captive. And no amount is too small, because mass incarceration has a face, and it is the face of freedom. Thank you. Until the next time.